worked with buyers or sellers in the last 6 months, what you know is that after a while, if there's no win in sight, everyone gets really cranky, right? Everyone starts to think this is not such a hot idea. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we banging our head against the wall to attempt this? Why don't we just renew our lease for another year and the hell with it, right? So you've got to help people find a win to make sure people are excited enough to stay focused on what it is they've chosen to do, right? Or to the point that they decide that they will take a break. And yet what I find is it's less about making a firm decision one way or the other, and more about keeping them pointed in the right direction, which means helping them find some version of a win. All right, that's my opening story for you. Riveting as it was, and yet again, the point I want to underline is we've got to continue to evolve. We've got to continue to turn over new stones and see what's underneath them, right? We've got to look for additional strategies that make us nervous, strategies that kind of give us a stomach ache, strategies that we look at and say, oh my goodness, I don't think I would ever do that. It's very possible that many of you on this call, in your head thinking, like, I would never buy it unseen. Like, I can't imagine doing that. And yet remember, you have to be careful that you're not bringing you into the mix there. Because your clients who want to purchase houses, guess what? Some of them want to purchase houses enough that they are willing to do that. Make sense? All right, guys, so what is it that is on your minds today? What's burning a hole in your brain? What do you want to make sure that we solve in together? If you unmute, I will see it and I will call on you to put something on the table. Yes, Elena.
So I'm representing the buyers, and I noticed the trend that if the seller needs to sell their own house, the listing agent suggests that we don't put any dates in the contract. So we sign the contract and the seller starts looking. If he doesn't find anything for 30 days and goes under contract, my buyer has the chance to walk away. Anybody came across of this scenario? And is it even legal to write the contract without any dates? Nothing, not inspection, not mortgage contingency. That's my question today.
So you represent, so just so I have it straight in my head, you represent the buyer who's looking to purchase a property where the seller of
by the seller, and he doesn't have a house to move into yet.
Okay, so the seller has to go and find suitable housing is the issue. Got it.
Yes, and we're already second or maybe even third buyer for the same property. The previous buyer walked away after a month, so we are coming next wave. Luckily, my clients have USDA loan, which takes forever. So I said, I'll give you even more extra time for USDA, which is 60 days for contingency, and I'll give you 2 more weeks. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We try to put the contract dates because otherwise there is no contract. Yes, Debbie.
Go ahead, Deb.
So I like target dates. Target dates are okay. You've got 30 days to figure out what you're doing. What's she looking for? How can you help her find the house she wants to move to?
Yeah, I think that's I would personally prefer to see a regular contract with a contingency written rather than a no dates contract. Because a no dates contract, if you really want to get specific, get picky about it, is probably not enforceable.
Exactly.
Because right, so you don't really have an enforceable contract. So I think I would rather see a normal contract written with dates and everyone moving in a direction with if the buyers and the sellers are agreeable on a contingency of if we don't have a house in 30 days, we don't have to sell, right? It's one of the things that we've been talking about in terms of getting sellers to say yes to putting their houses on the market, is that we'll cover you on the tail end by insisting on a contingency that you need to have the right to find suitable housing. It's not clean. It's a little messy in that, if the sellers themselves are, looking for that perfect property and not willing to make a whole lot of concessions around it, and that may be why you're on the third round of buyers in that particular scenario, right? But I like what Debbie said so other than having an actual contract with perhaps that contingency, I think that the only thing to do to create more urgency there is to help them find it, help figure it out, right? So now the conversation with the listing agent is, okay, what are they looking for? Let me see what I might have coming on. Let me see what people in my office might have coming on. Let me see what my ears to the ground all the time. Let me call a couple of my contacts. So share with me what they're looking for. And now you're doing it together to help push everyone towards the closing. I think that sometimes listing agents themselves in that scenario, they kind of throw their hands up and say, I'm not sure what to do. And so you kind of stepping in saying, you know what, I'll help. Let's tackle it together, right? You have strategies that maybe they're not thinking of. Because here's if that listing agent is simply waking up in the morning and staring at the MLS, it's unlikely that anything is going to move to a closing, right? They've got to be searching other means. And so maybe it's a conversation with the listing agent to say, hey, you know what? We had a mastermind in my office last week and we came up with these 6 ideas. If you take these 3, I'll take these 3. Let's figure out let's see if we can find somebody, right? Have you called the top 2 or 3 listing agents in every office located in a 10-mile radius from where these people want to live to see what they might have coming on? Have we tackled expireds that didn't sell? Have we done all those things that we've talked about in recent weeks to make sure that no stone goes unturned? It's a great idea. And have a valid contract. Right? Here's what I love about that scenario that Elena put on the table. I love the fact that the buyers themselves are willing to help figure something out with the sellers, knowing the scenario that we're all in, right? If buyers take a stand that says, I don't care about the sellers, a lot of those buyers are not going to find property, right? Everyone's to kind of be respectful and cognizant and caring around the circumstances of the other party to help everybody kind of step forward. I love, what did Tammy say on the call on the mastermind yesterday? I think she was on. One of the strategies that she's been hearing lately is our lease backs for free, up to 45 days, right? So the seller says, yes, I'll sell you the house. They get to stay in the house. It's a valid lease back, but the lease can come with any actual rent until day 46, right? Or maybe you do 60 days or whatever, right? And what's interesting in that scenario is now all of a sudden the sellers are out there. They feel less pressure because they know they have this opportunity to stay in their home and still make it work. And because, to me, maybe this is I don't mean for this to be a crude analogy, but sometimes when like a couple's trying to get pregnant and they're trying too hard to get pregnant and it doesn't happen, and the second you kind of stop trying, all of a sudden, whoop, there it is, right? There's something happens. Well, that's kind of how I see this working out with your sellers. If you kind of give them the opportunity to make it easy, they don't feel so confined by the market. And now they're out looking, and what we're seeing is that scenarios like that, it doesn't take the 45 or 60 days. They go out and they actually find something and secure something in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and all of a sudden everyone's moving forward. So, for what that's worth. Donna Gilbert.
I just wanted to add on what you were talking about with the lease backs, because I find myself in a situation right now. I'm working with buyers who did sell their house in upstate New York. They sold their house very, very quickly. They did not take, and they had multiple offers. They did not end up taking the highest offer They actually took a very strong offer, but they had a up to 6-month lease back provision in it. So, like you said, that gave them the breathing room to take that and then be able to look for their house. Now, here's the other side that I didn't put together until just recently. So now when we're going out and making offers on properties, we can say to those sellers, and oh, by the way, we can give you more time because they have time. So it's like a domino that can keep rolling forward. So that strengthens their offers. It's one of the terms and conditions that now, when they said to me what happened, I said, we can use that on our end too. We can now say, we can let you stay in the house. And it's still a very competitive market, but that was another tool that the lease back provided.
Yeah, it's like positive dominoes, right? Often we talk about the domino from the other side, like it's a negative domino effect. Donna's just putting the spin on it. Well, you know what? What if the dominoes fell forward, and so it's just this one positive. Until maybe you get to a person who says, that's awesome, I don't really need that, and then that's okay too. But again, using all those things as tools really does make a difference, and it can set you apart. Not only can it set you apart, here's the other thing to remember. It's not always about the money. And so if you're representing buyers who are in that scenario, who now can come to the table and say, okay, well, we'll offer X with this provision. There are some sellers out there who will be willing to accept less money for that provision. Right, so it gives sometimes it gives your buyers some more power in a market where they maybe feel a little bit helpless against in a multiple offer scenario. It gives them a little bit more muscle to say, you know what, here's what we're willing to pay, and yet we're going to bring this to the table. Great idea, great tool. What else? Hey, Debbie, did you want to talk a little bit about what you did last night? Because I thought that was a really powerful idea that you put on the road.
The unmute button. Yes, I will. So I am very excited about something. We all have coaches in our lives who tell us, I think this would be a good idea. Why don't you try this? And my coach has been telling me, this would be a really good idea. We're doing events. We're doing a lot of events and seminars. And her idea was do something called Seller Confidential Mastery. And talk to the sellers about what it's like to work in this environment and what they need to do and what's going on in real estate, basically. And we've been doing events all year. We're really finding that it's a very effective kind of medium, and it's working very well for us. So finally, we had our last event last Tuesday, and I thought, what am I going to do next Tuesday? So in a very short time, we put together Seller Confidential Mastery. And I used all the tools in command to promote this. We used social media to promote this. And we spent a fair amount of time creating a specific PowerPoint and series of around being a seller today. We had fabulous response. And when I say that, it was only 12 people, and it was 12 real people. Specifically, 12 people, we cast a very wide net. The 12 people who came were all who are in my command tag in my contacts called Nurture Sellers, with one or two exceptions who were in Past Sellers or General Sphere. But most of them Nurture Sellers, who I've been sending things to regularly. Crickets until last night. And we got to have face-to-face direct conversation explaining the market, showing some stats, talking about all of the elements of selling your home, and having them ask questions. And one by one, not every single one of them asked questions. And I found out things about 3 or 4 of them that I didn't know that helped me kind of target what I'm going to be talking to them about. So it was so cool. I was so delighted. And oh, by
Well,
the
and if
way, the cost of it, except for the $50 that I put behind a campaign in Command, it was cost free.
So for $50, which was a choice you made to push out a campaign, you ended up with. See, the way I look at that is you had preliminary listing appointments with 12 potential sellers.
100%. And actually, I have a real listing appointment with one of them on Friday.
And the pre-listing appointment with 12 potential sellers was done as a group. It only took, there's efficiency there, right, that you can't get someplace else.
Right.
So I love, it's such a great idea, right? And the name of it itself, the confidential, it's like you're going to tell them secrets that like, shh, don't tell any of these secrets. It's part of why people say yes to it, right? And so there's so much to learn from what Debbie just talked about in that. Can you give us some of the, I know you said to me earlier today, one of the things you learned ultimately will trigger a conversation that could lead to a listing. What was one of the things that you learned from one of those people?
So I found out that somebody I had sold a house to is in a condo in Norwalk. And she said, I discover I really don't like living in a condo. I really want to get back into a single family home. Okay. Well, so we focused on single family last night because you can't tell the whole story. You don't know who specifically is going to be on the call or the seminar. So we just focused on single family. And she said, well, is it the same thing going on with condos? Well, sort of. Yeah, it is. So I just sent her out some more specific information so that we can have a follow-up conversation. Another one, and so one of the people on the call, I did a market analysis for in 2010. They are in my sphere. I've known them forever. They come to all of the events. And now they're ready to make a move. Another one I did a market analysis for in 2016, I think. And they have a vintage home in Reading. Well, in 2016, vintage homes in Reading were selling at a drastic discount. We couldn't get it over $1 million. Today, the market there brings it over $1 million because in 2020, I think 49 vintage homes sold in Reading. Vintage homes hadn't sold in Reading in a decade. No joke. So he pushed that information out to him today. It gave me so much to work with. It's like, oh my goodness, I have a whole new ball of yarn to play with. So, yeah. And next week, so now we're like addicted to these addicted to these seminars. So next week we're editing our buyer seminar, which has been a primarily first-time buyer seminar. We're editing it. We're going to call it, guess what? Buyer Confidential Mastery. And some of the things that you guys have just been talking about will be a part of that conversation. How to find the buyers a way to find homes that they might not think they're able to find and work out the out of the box thinking to be able to secure them for them, wrap up their offers with a bow and get them into a property, and talk about creative financing and also how much they can buy instead of renting, because the rents right now have gotten ridiculous. We're looking at $3,000 as kind of a baseline rent. The properties that I'm seeing at $3,000 are just interesting. And so what can they buy for that? Right now, while the interest rates are where they are, they can buy a lot house.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, for those of you who are on the call on Tuesday morning with Harrison Beecher, Debbie's just talking about one more way to dive into your database and find opportunity in that database. Harrison Beecher told us that in 2020, him and his very small team sold 220 buyers, right? He said 60 to 70 of them came from his database. Can you imagine 60 to 70 people coming from your database? Right, and so what's awesome is that we're just working with him to come back in mid-March to give us all those tips and tricks, and Debbie just put one of those strategies on the table for you. Right, start to have these seminars. Last week, Deb, if I'm not mistaken, you did a seminar for your database that was just on retirement planning or estate planning. This week was the seller confidential. Next week will be the buyer confidential. And what's interesting is that Debbie will likely get different people to say yes to each of those different seminars. I'd be surprised if there was one person in the three that was the same, right?
So we have, in the first 4 seminars we did, one person came to 3 of them. And I haven't seen her since. So she kind of got her fill. And now, the thing is, the same group of a lot of people get every single one of these invitations. I'm not saying, oh, this is for you, or this is for you. This is for you. So, and to your point, mostly it's different people. I hadn't seen any of these people on any of the other seminars.
Yeah. The beauty of the Environment Day is that it makes these kinds of seminars not only easy to do, but there's an appetite out there for them, right? People want to be connected with other people, and it's simple to do via Zoom for 60 minutes. Go ahead, Donna.
So there's so many things about what Debbie just shared is amazing. First, let's not hear what also happened. So just because we're sending stuff out and nobody gets back to us doesn't mean they're not listening. It doesn't mean that. They contact us when they're ready, and that's it. So just keep sending it. But here's the other thing is, yes, since the beginning of COVID, people have been starved for community. And if they've heard the message that that there's a hot market and you get a lot, they don't know what we know. They don't know how. What does that mean? Do you understand it? It seems crazy. So providing content that people can opt into is fantastic. And yeah, they know now that there's a place. So whether you'll see that lady again, because she knows every, whatever it is, Tuesday at 6:30, let me check out Debbie's channel because she's probably doing something brilliant. The consistency of that, I mean, this is so much a play off of what we just concentrated on in Family Reunion about being not only hyper local, but being the whole experience, being everything they need, wrapping our arms around them and showing them our intrinsic value here. So, it's so massively powerful.
All righty. Whew. It's a good one, huh? What else, Erica?
I just wanted to add what Dana said. You remember Lucy Parker, who is rocking real estate in Dubai? She was telling to all of us, they have to know you before they know you, before they really meet you. So they're really monitoring your social media or just your presence out there and helping and educating clients.
Yeah, so right, so right. To Erica's point, let me take a minute here and throw out an exercise that I think will be helpful to you. I have one of my private coaching clients is looking to make a mark in the town that she lives in, right? And so we worked out this plan. I said to her, okay, well, right now, I want you to let's together pull a list of the top 5 real estate agents in that local area, in that specific town. What do you notice about the people? And she said, well, the first thing I notice is that I'm not one of them. I said, well, there you go, right? That was ultimately the goal of the first part of that exercise. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take some time and I want you to benchmark your business against those 5 businesses. And she said, well, I'm not sure what you mean. I said, well, here's what I mean. How do those people find business have? What are your thoughts on that? What can you examine from looking from the outside in about their business? Find some opportunities to benchmark against. Do some research. And then once you've researched where those 5 people are strong, you can then choose how to build that section of, maybe it exposes an area of weakness in your business, right? And so she went off and she came back for the next time we spoke, and she said, okay, so I chose a couple of different things to benchmark against. The first one was their social media presence, like what I see happening social media. So she went through each of the 5 of them and looked them up on Facebook, looked them up on Instagram, looked them up on LinkedIn, saw, do they have business pages or personal pages? How are they populating them? Is it all business? Is it, like Erica says, that Lucy Parker, suddenly I was from Long Island all over again. Lucy Parker. It took me 25 years to get rid of that accent. It's funny how it just kind of jumped right back in at me. If you'll excuse me, I have to get some coffee as well. So the idea of taking a look at those social media presences. Then she went and looked at their online outside of social media. What does their website look like? Right? Is it connected to other sites? What does it do? How does it do it? Right? Is it something to look at? Does it talk about them? Does it talk about the services? What's available out there? And then she went and she looked at community involvement. She did as much research as she possibly could on those top 5 people. What do they do for their community? Are they constantly sponsoring things or running kinds of events or this or that or the other thing? How do they advertise and market themselves, or do they? Right? And one of the things I asked her to do was also make a determination as you're looking for these benchmarks, determine whether or not those benchmarks are something that the agent themselves are doing, or are they plugging into something that is either provided or the bridge that they are connected with. I wanted her to know whether or not there was something that these people were doing on their own, or if it was just because they were with XYZ company and XYZ company does that really well. And so what was fascinating was when she came back, the answers were all over the map. There were 2 of those 5 people who were completely all over social media, doing awesome, great things. So many of the things that Lucy Parker taught us to do, they were already doing. And so her aha was, in order to be better at social media, those 2 people were the benchmark. And so she had to be doing things at least at that level and then plussing it from there. The other 3 people didn't matter as much from a social media perspective because those 2 were the benchmark. And she went on from there. Somebody else had really great web presence and awesome tools related to their website that people could utilize. Somebody else ran events constantly, like was big into the community, right? Okay, well, at what level? And so she got to really see what those top 5 competitors in that market that she was looking to take market in were good at, and how they were operating their business, which you can then surmise is how they're driving their leads, right? Based on these things that they're doing. And then she could develop a plan to plus it. And I want to encourage each of you to do this benchmarking exercise, because without it, you don't really have a target, right? Well, I want to be bigger. Okay, well, that's like Alice coming to me and saying, you know what, Rick, this year I really want to make more money. Okay, well, I could give Alice a quarter. She now has more. Is that really what she meant? More than what? What in what perspective? Oh, more than last year. Okay, well, so let's build a program that gets you to minimally last year, and then I'll give you a quarter. Well, you've now made more money than last year, but that also isn't what Alice meant, right? What we really need to know is what's that baseline? Where is the benchmark, and how are we building it from there? Right? This is a business owner's conversation, right? And a lot of times as real estate agents, we get mired in conversations about listings and sales, and we forget about having a conversation around being a business owner and growing a business. Does that make sense to everybody? Here's the other thing that I asked this particular client to do. She wasn't terribly happy with me when I asked it, but I asked her to start tracking her market share in that particular location, in that particular town. She said, well, it's like embarrassingly small. I said, well, there's nothing embarrassing about a number, right? It just is what it is. Where are you today? And let's just figure out how we double it. And then double it again, and then double it again. From a market share perspective, she's probably only about 6 or 8 transactions out of the top 5. Right? So when we started to break it down into you're only 6 or 8 transactions out of the top 5, then we get to focus. Okay, well, how do we do the same amount of business as last year and add 6 to 8 units in that town or location? Now we have something specific to target, and then the benchmarking shows us how we're going to do it. Do you see what I'm talking about? Am I the only person excited about this?
No, I love what you're talking about because it becomes very specific, and you can segment further. You can segment even further and look at your database and look at your public open houses and look at your internet leads, web leads, and you can be specific about how much of your goals for this year you want to obtain from each of those segments.
Yep.
And be very, and to the point, I could feel when you said that, she didn't want to look at that because it was so infinitesimal. Yeah, and it looks really scary to say, yeah, I want to have 10 pieces of business from my database. I want to have 20 pieces of business from this source, from my public open houses. Then you just have to figure out how.
Well, what's interesting is that moving from, how many of you remember last week at Family Reunion when there was a conversation around be 1% better, right? Incrementally get better, incrementally move your results 1% at a time. Right. And what I said to this particular client was, you know what, so if you're at 0.005% market share today as an individual agent, what would your world look like if we moved it to 0.001? Right? That would be double 0.005. What if we doubled your market share? What would that have to look like? Let's translate it into units, benchmark what the top people are doing, and then just do what they do better than they do. Guess what? It's working. She's taking more listings in that particular town than she's ever taken before. She developed a program because she benchmarked against that one agent who was doing cool stuff in the community. She developed a program based on March Madness. And the Chamber of Commerce in that town saw what she was doing, outwardly called her and said, we love that idea. Can we wider with your support on the back end? And oh, by the way, we'll give you $700 as a marketing budget to help it. So she just told me that this past week when we were on our call. And I said, all right, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to finish the March Madness promotion in that particular town. And then you're going to take it to your 4 other surrounding towns that you also do business in. and go to the Chamber of Commerce and say, look, I just ran this program for this particular town. Here were the results. And it's all about promoting local businesses, which is why the Chamber of Commerce was so into it. Then take that program to the 4 surrounding towns and say, here's what they gave me to run it in that town. Let's partner and do it in your town. So she's going to take something that, again, it all started from benchmarking that one agent. And here was her aha. She said, you know what? I never even noticed that particular agent was so engaged in the community before. I didn't know until she was asked to really look at it. And then this idea came from her benchmarking exercise, which is now taking on a life of its own. Done.
And so here's I'm excited too. I'm excited too, because here's what it also showed. You started with, I want to do better. I want to do more. I want to whatever, fill in all that. But then finding out, really digging deep into what would that look like? Why do I want that? How would I achieve it? How would I measure it? It really drills down into being that business owner, working on the business instead of in the business. It also feeds back into the Think Like a CEO podcast about building wealth that just dropped February 8th, Gary Keller, Jay Papasan. Knowing what the money is going to be used for. So it has a purpose. So you have it going back to your big why, driving, and that's kind of what gets you out of bed in the morning on the days that you don't really want to. It's like, yeah, but I do want this in my future. And these are the baby steps. These are the things that I have to accomplish to make it happen. So yeah, that is thrilling.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Well, I'll tell you how the conversation ended, and then open it back up. The conversation ended by me saying, you know what, if it were me, I would reach out one by one, maybe do 1 or 2 a week, contact those top 5 agents and say, hey, here's the script. Hey, I can't help but notice how great your business has been doing. I would love to take you to lunch or have a cup of coffee or do a Zoom luncheon together to just talk about the market. I'd love to share with you some of the things that I'm working on to find inventory and just talk about what that looks like with you because I pay attention and I notice how great you're doing. Take them to lunch, flatter them, and then ask questions about how are you doing what you're doing? Wow, I see you took all these listings in this neighborhood. Do you live there? No. Great. Well, how are you attracting all those people? Now, understand, if they live outside our 4 walls, right? It is true that sometimes inside of our 4 walls, we come across like crazy sharers, right? Like we kind of bare our souls to each other from a business perspective to make sure that we are sharing good ideas so that we can all benefit. That's not always the culture of a real estate office. And so there may be some resistance to that. Be okay with it. It's all right. It's okay, right? You be your sharing self. And what I have learned over time is that when you are your sharing self, even the strictest non-sharers can't help but share something, right? Because you're sharing so much. Just be okay with it. Maybe the people that you are looking to benchmark against are members of our own community, right? Inside of the market centers. Well, then it's simple, right? Then just set up a little Zoom call to say, hey, you know what, Amy, would you mind if I just picked your brain a little bit? Because I'm envious of what you did last year and I'd like to actually do what you did this year and I didn't do that. So I wondered if you would mind spending 20 minutes with me and just kind of talk through how you do what you do. Because I'd love to emulate that in 2020. There's almost no one in our world that will say no to that. So I encourage that. Right? You've heard me say that we grow our market centers. We benchmark the market centers. Each of our market centers is benchmarked against a market center that is larger and more profitable than ours. And what we find is that we continue to monitor from an agent mix perspective what those numbers look like, right? Because profits are derived by all of you. And so we monitor that. And as our team leaders continue to close those gaps, guess what happens? We become more and more competitive with those market centers that we're attempting to emulate. And so as soon as we hit the benchmark, then we find somebody else to benchmark. I'll tell you, it works because we've been doing it for the last 2 years, and it works. It works. Both market centers are closing in on their benchmarks, so that we're going to need to find new benchmarks as we pass our old benchmarks. What else? What else would be helpful for us to solve? What are the problems of the world can we solve today? Nothing, huh? We solved them all? Elena.
Another question. Now I have a renter who is looking for the houses, but most of them are listed with some management property companies. So is it the trend now, and they're not working with the realtors, and they're out of state? I tried calling them. I was on hold for 5 minutes just to find out if they work with the realtor. So how to find properties for renters then?
Yeah, so great question. So if you have opportunities where they're not necessarily MLS listed, right, and they're working with property management companies, there's 2 ways to approach that. Either finding the property management company and asking some questions as you attempted to do, or working with your tenants and letting the tenants know that they'll have a fee to pay. Right, you can get paid by either side. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the other side. It all comes out in the wash, right? Because when the landlord is paying a fee, they make it up by just charging a little bit more in the rent. So the tenants get to pay one way or the other. I think it's important to always recognize that money is money is money. It's not like it's just a matter of who to check to whom. So in a scenario where things are so tight, that's why our contracts are written from the perspective of, look, the tenant and or the buyer is the one who is obligated to pay the fee. Oftentimes leave that from someone else, and yet the buck kind of stops there. And so reminding them that, look, in these scenarios where there may not be an offer of compensation for me from the other side, here's what that would look like for you. I'm curious, knowing that that's going to fall to you, is this still something you'd like to pursue together? Right, so you remind them before you go and show them the property that in this scenario, there is no compensation being offered. And so therefore that would then fall on them. I think if you're willing to ask those questions and point those things out, I think you'll be crazy surprised how many say, you know what, I need a place to live. And so, yeah, if they're not clearly, you're not doing this for fun, you do it to create an income. And so therefore we'll do what we have to do. They may not love it. And yet many times the conversation will end up in, you know what, I understand. Or they cannot pursue that. Here's what you have to remember. When they sign an exclusive representation agreement, what they can't do is go and pursue that without you. That's not part of an exclusive arrangement, right? I don't know if that helps or not, but I would say that those are the 2 paths. You either find the property management company and have an agreement with them about how you'll get paid, or make sure that the tenant knows that they have the option to pay the fee, negotiate with them what that fee might be, and then push that forward. What else?
Can I just jump onto that, what you were saying?
Of course.
A lot
Yeah.
of the newer buildings, especially here in Stamford, have a listing agent and a lease office. And in order for the buyer's agent, if you will, or tenant's agent to get compensated, they have to bring the person for the very first time. And then once they've had the tour and everything, then you will be compensated if they move forward. And it's not, it's usually like, I guess you would call a referral fee as opposed to a commission, but that's how you get paid in some of these newer buildings.
Yeah, no, and we've seen that a lot in certainly the last 12 to 18 months, right? And here's what you need to remember. If you have a signed tenant, do remember that sometimes you have to utilize our chips as some leverage, right? And what I mean by that is sometimes these companies will come back and say, oh, no, Alice, you didn't bring them the first time. They actually wandered in last weekend. We have them signed in here, so you're not due anything, right? So then in consultation with that particular tenant who has hired you exclusive representative, you go back to the building to say, you know what, I completely understand. Unfortunately, because of my exclusive arrangement with them, I am due a commission and they're not terribly interested in paying it. So if you're interested in them as a tenant, we're going to have to figure out an arrangement that makes sense for us all. That's called utilizing that relationship as some leverage with the building. Now, maybe the building says, you know what, tenants are a dime a dozen. We don't need yours. Thank you very much. Perhaps that happens, but you're having that conversation with the tenant, but to have that conversation with the building to see if you can't then insert yourself. Right. And don't forget, if the tenant has signed with you, the tenant is responsible for the fee. And so now we have to figure out, okay, how is this going to work, right? I guess my main point to underline there is I understand that that's how a lot of these buildings in a perfect world want to work. Don't be pushed, don't be bullied by those buildings, right? Be willing to stand up and professionally, and not necessarily contentiously, but be willing to stand up to say, here's how I see this. How can we all kind of work together to make this make sense? These folks would like to live here. I have this arrangement with them. You're excluding me for reasons that maybe don't necessarily have to be final. Where's the path forward? What else? Nothing else? You've all got it all figured out, huh? Well, how are you listing property? Who's got new listings coming on this week? Just by a quick show of hands. Yes, that's way not enough hands, right? Does everyone agree that the yes?
I just looked at our active listings, and they're kind of scary. I mean, 22 active single family or condos in Ridgefield and 50 in Stamford. Yikes, that's not enough.
Yeah. Right. So less than 75 active single family properties among the 550 of us. Right. It's definitely scarce. Trust me when I tell you, the story is not different in the masterminds that are happening or not happening, depending on in other brokerages. However, that just continues to point us in a direction that says we've got to lead, we've got to set the course, we've got to continue to work from the perspective of, you know what, the industry needs us right now. The industry needs us to come to the table with inventory. We need to be the ones who go and find it. We need to be the help that sellers need to make positive decisions, right?
So I'm gonna, well, I see there's a hand up. I'll come back after the hand is done.
Yes, Ben.
Yeah, hey Rick. So I have a listing under deposit. So I'm gonna start calling that neighborhood. You know, I know the market's hot. I mean, what's your best one-liner that you got that I could throw out as a script while I call those people?
Did you receive multiple offers on the property that's under agreement?
Yeah, we had a couple others. We had 3 total.
Great. So what I would say is calling the neighborhood goes something like this. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is Ben Boger over at Keller Williams Realty. I'm sure you saw that that the Joneses retained me to secure a buyer for their home. Just wanted to let you know that we actually were able to do that relatively quickly at above asking price. And the reason for my call today is because we actually generated more offers than the Joneses could accept. And so there's definitely a pent-up demand for inventory in this neighborhood. And I'm just curious if you know of anyone, any of your neighbors, anyone that you might know, like who do you know that's looking to take advantage of the fact that we have pent-up demand, buyer pent-up demand in this particular neighborhood?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Just wanted to hear it again. Thank you.
Yeah.
So-
if you have multiple offers, use the multiple offers, because that legitimizes the reason for your call. It allows you to be able to go out and say, look, I'm not kidding. Like we had multiple offers on this particular property that the Joneses could only say yes to one person. So there's still a whole bunch of people out there looking to live here that are willing to pay and maybe even overpay for property right here.
Yeah.
Debbie.
We just sent postcards to a neighborhood where we had that situation, and I literally have a listing appointment tomorrow from those postcards. So the
There you
other
go.
thing that I want to say is truly different things trigger in my mind the names of different people. And so truly, when we talk about spending time on our business, devote 30 minutes today to look at every name in every database that you have, that you can look at in 30 minutes and go, I wonder about those people. I wonder about those people. I mean, I'm scrolling through some old names going, they never did anything. And they're not in any of my other piles over here. They're just sitting in my database. So just dig. Just dig, keep digging, and don't stop until you get a listing.
Yeah. You know where else you can do that? You can do that in your phone. Just open your
Right
texts
there.
and start scrolling, right? Like, oh man, I haven't spoken to that person in a long time. I think I'll reach out and just see how they're doing. Oh, haven't spoken to that person, right? So it can be a little, that sounds a little haphazard, I understand. And yet haphazard, sometimes you stumble upon opportunity.
Just
Love
take
that.
30 minutes and do that.
Yeah, really important. Erica.
Can I share the screen and show something that I just posted on Facebook?
Yes, while I'm doing that, Erica, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to thank for the idea of Gabby and for the script. I have a beautiful home coming up, a single family, sadly a little bit far in Woodbury, but I definitely going to use the script when I'm gonna hopefully get multiple offers.
Yeah, I love that. And if you have inventory coming on in Woodbury, make sure that Elena knows about it because she's got
Donna.
buyers there.
And Donna,
And Donna, right?
and Donna,
So
2 buyers, please.
Absolutely. 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 I will provide all the information tomorrow. Great.
So there it is. So 3 houses in contract, multiple offers. Something that I learned recently was don't show the outside of the house, show the side of the house when you're doing marketing pieces, because it helps people see themselves living there. So I chose the fireplaces, a fireplace in each of the houses, addresses, how many offers were received on each of these properties, and then let's drive traffic to your home to get you moved. And I'm just playing with people. I'm just throwing out ideas. Are you ready to make your move? It's very exciting. Want to come have some fun? Call me. I don't know
people
what's
like
going to happen.
fun. Well, that's really smart because you know what? The alternative is here we've had all these different and it's really confusing and complicated, right? And if you don't say want to have some fun, people can translate the multiple offers into confusing and complicated. So I love that phrase, want to have some fun, right? How excited we are, right? Because it helps alleviate some of the fear from the potential sellers. That's just all kind of marketing buzzwords that I think absolutely work. Love it.
Oh, by the way, I made that in Command in Designs, and I made it in about 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, and so if you want to know how Debbie did that, will you show them that at 3 o'clock today? Yeah, so remember, Debbie has a 1 hour command designs class at 3 o'clock today. So just a little over an hour from, a little under an hour from now. So if you want to know how to make that something like simply in 5 minutes in command to post, bam. Yes, 3 p.m. is right here in the main Zoom room prior to Ignite. Guys, we are out of time. I am sorry to say, and I do have to move to another appointment. So I hope that this was helpful for you. It has been recorded. So if there were ideas that you want to hear again, watch for that recording to be posted either late today or tomorrow morning. For those of you who will be joining me in Ignite, I'll see you at 4 o'clock. And if for everybody else, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Have a great one. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Hey, to the people that are left, what do people think about texting instead of calling? Has anybody had any luck with texting? Is that looked down upon?
Texting for what? For
Like, you know, for leads instead of calling, like, you know, like I see like on the list, sometimes there's cell phone numbers that never pick up.
I always text.
Oh yeah? All right, so it's okay to text, like it's not like, you know, some people see it like unprofessional, but it's okay to text in this field, like it's fine. Just texting, whatever.
I don't know. You need
Like
to
I'm
be
brand
you.
new. I just started cold calling, like, you know, this morning. So I'm like, is it okay to text? All right, cool. Just asking.
Yeah. Can you
Thank
hear
you,
me?
Elena.
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yep.
Can you hear me? This is Erica. So Rick always
yeah.
says that you are much more personal if you are dialing. You are much more persuasive even in person. However, I noticed also that texting, I'm getting greater responses because especially millennials, everybody's texting. Nobody picks up the phone, but everybody's texting.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. Yep. That's what I thought. But just, you know, just wanted to ask all the pros here, like if it's working for them or not. So I'm glad to hear that it is. So I'll start doing that also. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure seeing everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.